chapter 4, verses 1 and 2, saying that financial set forget. Hey there. Welcome to the Radical Godly Stewardship Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Lexi Johnson. I'm super excited that you're here. This is where heaven's economy collides with Earth's assignments. I am your financial rebel, your kingdom disruptor, and your accountability coach into obedience because around here, we don't beg God for money. Nope, that is not what we do. We align, we obey, and we produce, multiply, and dominate. So if you're ready to steward well, think boldly, and build kingdom wealth, then let's dive in. So glad that you can be with us today. Listen, whether you're watching this broadcast live or you're watching the replay, let us know who you are and where you are watching from. All right. Today, we need to talk about something that hasn't fully hit yet, but the signs are already here. And that is a credit crunch. Yep, that's what we're talking about today. And we're not just talking about high interest rates, and we're not just talking about expensive debt, right? Although we will touch on those. But I'm also talking about restricted access to money. So that means banks tightening, that means approvals shrinking, that means limits being reduced. So we are quietly moving away from you can borrow easily to you must prove you deserve access. Okay. And if you don't understand what's happening right now, then you are absolutely going to feel it later and you won't be ready. Okay. So today we're going to break it down. We're going to talk about what a credit crunch actually is. We're going to talk about why it's developing right now. We're also going to talk about how it will affect everyday people. We're going to talk about why this wake-up call, why this is a wake-up call that is for kingdom citizens. And we're going to talk about how to position yourself so that you're not dependent on systems that can restrict you. But before we get into all of that, we're going to do our stewardship check-in. All right. So I want you to ask yourself honestly, if my access to credit disappeared tomorrow, would I be okay? Right? Think about it, really think about it, because I know that there are many of you out there that even right now, you're using credit to try to make ends meet, right? You're putting gas in your car with your credit card. You're buying groceries with your credit card. You are paying bills with your credit card, right? Not everybody, but there are a lot of people out here who are in that position already, right? So if your access disappeared tomorrow, would you be okay, right? Could you cover an emergency? Could you cover a car repair, right? I had to cover um, a household repair, right? That was just shy of $1,000, right? So could you cover that? Could you cover a gap in income, right? Or would you be forced into panic decisions? Because listen, that's what happens when people don't have anywhere to turn. They panic, right? And then they begin to make decisions out of panic and fear, right? So if your access to credit disappeared tomorrow, would you be okay? The next question that I want you to ask yourself is, have I built a system or have I just been surviving on access? Because there's a difference, right? Some people have income systems, other people have credit systems that are disguised as stability, right? So you may have bought into the lie just because you could reach for that credit card and swipe something, right? And you get paid in a couple of weeks, so you'll just send another minimum payment in on your credit card, or the minimum payment plus a few dollars or whatever. And so you have bought into this lie that you're actually stable, right? But today, I want you to be very honest with yourself. Have you built a system, right? Or have you been surviving on access? Okay. Third question that I want you to ask yourself is, where is your trust? And for Kingdom citizens, this is huge. Where's your trust? Is your trust in these credit card approvals or loan approvals or some other type of, financing approvals, like those, buy in for, buy now, pay later type things, right? Is that what your trust is in? Is your trust in credit limits? Is your trust in access? Or is your trust in disciplined stewardship? Proverbs 22, verse 7 says that the rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. In your translation, it may say slave to the lender, right? Now, this scripture is not here for condemnation, because remember, the Lord is not about condemnation. He is here for conviction. He is here for so that you can have clarity, right? So when I'm saying this is not about condemnation. This is so that you can get clarity, right? So this is so that we can be honest, truly honest with where we are with ourselves, so that we can begin to take the appropriate steps, right? Because if you continue to disguise it as stability, right? This swiping of your credit cards and all of that, you just continue to, disguise it as stability. You're not really addressing it. Eventually stuff is going to hit the fan, okay? Because it always does. So when we confront ourselves and we become clear on where we are, right? Then we can actually move forward. So let's get to this credit crunch. What exactly is it? So I don't have no water over here with me. I usually have water. I don't usually need it. And now I'm like, I want to drink water. All right. Anyway, what is a credit crunch? So a credit crunch is when lenders tighten approval standards, right? The borrowing becomes harder. So it's not just becoming more expensive, because we've been talking about that, right? We've been talking about where um, the interest rates and stuff are high, right? So it's expensive, but it's not just expensive anymore. Borrowing is actually becoming harder. Credit limits are actually shrinking, right? And risk tolerance is decreasing, meaning on the company's end, right? The company that is going to give you credit, their tolerance for risk in this season is decreasing. They are not trying to take on a lot of risk. So, as I mentioned, this is not just about the cost of borrowing, it is about access to borrowing. That is what we're talking about when we're talking about a credit crunch. We have to talk about everything that involves borrowing, the cost of borrowing, and the access to borrowing. All right. Access is what most people are depending on. Okay. So you might be filling out, for credit cards, you might be filling out for an auto loan, a home loan, or whatever the case may be. You're trying to finance things, and you might just find that it's a little bit tougher in this season. Okay. Now, why is this happening right now? Why is it happening right now? Well, there are several factors that are converging. Okay. And converging means several factors. They're individual factors, but they're all coming together, right? And meeting in this same spot. So, number one, high interest rates. Okay, that's the first factor. This is one that we've talked about already. So the rates have stayed elevated long enough to slow borrowing, to increase default risk, okay, and to pressure lenders. Okay, slowing the borrowing. This is what the high interest rates have done. It has slowed down borrowing. It's increasing default risk because, now the people are having to pay things back at higher interest rate, and they probably didn't really already have it at the lower interest rate, right? So that's creating this risk for people to default on their loans or on their credit. And then it also pressures lenders. Okay. So that's the first factor. Another factor is rising consumer debt. Rising consumer debt. Now, despite me saying, and I have been saying this for probably since September, I know I've been saying, I say this on and off about addressing debt, but I have really been hammering that here over the last several months. We still have rising consumer debt. Credit card balances are high. Delinquencies are rising in certain categories, right? And so the lenders, they see the risk, they see these many people going into default, and their response is to now tighten the access to borrowing. Okay. Another factor that we see is economic uncertainty. So, right now, we have some job instability in certain sectors. We've got automation and AI disrupting everything. We've got global economic shifts. We've got, you know, a war going on. That's not a war, that is a war, whatever the case may be, right? That is causing some blowback. And so, all of this uncertainty makes lenders very cautious. Okay. So, again, you're going to see higher rates, but you're also going to see tightening. Another factor that we need to think about is the banking system pressure, right? So, when banks feel pressure, um, they don't announce their panic, right? They do things very quietly. So you'll just find that you're not getting approved for much. They're going to reduce exposure. So this is not the time where you're going to see them out there, really pursuing people to get loans. There are seasons when they're just like after you're getting mailings all to every other day about, hey, take out this loan, look at this product we got, da 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 da, right? This is not the season where you're going to see that. There's going to be some reduced exposure in that sense. And this is where they are going to protect capital. And most people are not knowing this really. That most people don't know this is going on, right? They don't know unless you're going in there to fill out, to apply for credit, to apply for a loan or something, and you get denied. All right. So this is why I'm sharing this with you, because you need to know that this is going on. Whether you need access to credit or not, you need to be aware that this is going on. If you are in the market for some type of credit, right? Auto loan, home loan, this, that, whatever, you need to be aware. If you are selling a home, right? You need to be aware, right? If you run a business where people have to, um, you take out credit to pay for your service, you need to be aware of this, okay? Because typically most people don't really think about this until they get denied. All right. We need to be thinking about these things beforehand. So, what this will look like for people, okay? Because this won't hit all at once. And I think that this is why we aren't really ever prepared for it. It's going to show up gradually, okay? So you will start to see lower credit limits, more denied applications, higher approval standards, reduced promotional offers, and tighter lending for small businesses. All right. So people who relied on balance transfers, because there are people who do that, right? They're like, I'm gonna go take out this credit, and then I'll just go find a card where I can transfer the balance, all the balances, right? I can transfer to this one credit card, has lower interest rate, da 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 da, and I'll be fine. Right? People who relied on that, people who have relied on credit cards for emergencies, and people who rely on personal loans to bridge gaps. These are the people who are going to feel it first. This is why during the stewardship check-in, I asked for you to reflect on, if access was taken away tomorrow, would you be okay? Because the people who have become dependent on these things, you are going to feel it first. Okay? You're going to feel it first. Now, here's the real problem. The real issue is not the credit crunch. Okay? Even with all I've said, the real issue is not the credit crunch. The real issue is our dependence on credit as a financial strategy. You know that access to credit in the way that we have it now actually wasn't even really a thing, I think, until like the 80s, the early 80s, late 70s, something like that. Don't quote me, somewhere around in there, right? Prior to that, it was very, very hard to get credit. And a large part of me prefers it to be that way, right? But then there's another part of me that is like, it shouldn't be that hard. People should have access, but the problem is us. We have not been responsible with it, right? And we have become dependent on credit as a financial strategy. Well, if I don't have the money right now, I'll just take it out on credit. If I don't have the money right now and I don't even know how I'm getting the money in the foreseeable future, right? I'll just put it on credit. I'll just take a loan, right? Credit was never meant to be your emergency fund. I will say that again. Credit was never meant to be your emergency fund. And we have way too many people who, when emergency does come up, they're like, I'm just going to put it on the credit card, right? But you put it on the credit card and you still have to figure out you're just delaying an inevitable disaster. Okay, because you still, at the end of the day, when that credit card bill comes in, you still have to figure out how you're going to pay that off. You still have to look at, okay, I got to take money from somewhere and address that, right? Or rob Peter to pay Paul, right? At the end of the day, it still has to be paid. And if you keep putting it off, right? Like you're like, I'll just pay the minimum on it, and you keep doing that amount that you owed, it just grows because of the interest, right? Then it's at a place where you really can't handle it. Okay. So the credit card was never meant to be your emergency fund. The credit card was also never meant to be your income backup, because that's how people treat it. Listen, I out of a job right now, just use up my credit cards, or my hours got cut, I'll just use up my credit cards. Or I'm expecting to get some kind of promotion 6 months from now or whatever, I'll just use my credit cards until then. Your credit cards were never meant to be income backup. They were never meant to be a financial strategy, right? They really were just meant for possibly like cash flow, you know what I'm saying? Because in the beginning, a lot of the credit cards, if I'm right, I may be wrong, but if I'm right, a lot of credit cards, you would take them out in the beginnings of this thing, and then you would have to pay it off like within the 30 days, right? And then it got to a point where you could just pay these minimums and hold these balances forever. But the reason that it became that way is because it was much more profitable for banks to do that. They weren't caring about making things easier for you. They were caring about profit, and they still do. Okay. So your credit card was never meant to be your income backup. Your credit card was also never meant to be your survival plan. It just wasn't. That is not what the credit card was designed for. These are what credit cards are being used for in many households, and they're being used wrongly. And then, you know, we get ourselves into a place where we've got, you know, 20,000, 30,000, 50,000, 100,000, 200,000, and I've seen more credit card debt. Okay. We're never meant to be backup plans, emergency funds, survival plans, but that's exactly what they've become. So let's get some clarity on this, shall we? Let's shine a light on this a little bit, okay? Scripture never promotes financial dependence, okay? On credit cards, on any type of borrowing, right? What it does promote, though, is stewardship, discipline, foresight, and preparation. Those are the things that the Bible promotes. Proverbs 21:20 says that the wise store up, right? But fools consume all they have, right? And so if you find yourself being dependent on credit cards and loans and all of that stuff, and God forbid, payday loans and all those types of things, then that means that you are just consuming everything that you have. Okay. A credit crunch exposes the difference between prepared households and dependent households. Now, how do you position yourself, right? This is where we shift now from awareness and we move into action, okay? Because it's one thing to be aware, but it's another thing to actually do something about it. The first thing that you should do is build liquidity. What does that mean? Accessible cash, okay? Give yourself, a small minimum to start with, like maybe $1,000. Maybe it even has to be 500. Get to 500, get to 1,000. And my thing is, how quickly can you do that? Right? Map out a plan. And when I say that, like, don't, you know, break your back trying to do it, in 2 weeks, but map out a plan. How can you get there? And how is the fastest you can get there? Look at your spending and where is there waste that you can actually take that money, right, and start putting it up towards that $1,000. Um, are there things that you're doing that you really don't have to do right now? Like you can sacrifice those things now for a season, right? Like, are you getting your hair done every 2 weeks? It's not necessary. Are you, going out to eat all the time? Are you um, paying way too much for your phone and internet? All kinds of things, right? Where can you free up some cash so you can get to this $1,000 as quickly as possible? And then once you get to that $1,000, then the next goal is 2,500, and so on and so forth until you have at least 3 months of your expenses that's sitting aside for emergencies, the unexpected, sometimes the expected unexpected, right? Because we know that the tires have to be changed on the car. We know, right? So those things should not be emergencies. That's a whole nother type of saving. But anyhow, I'm just saying liquidity, you need to have some access to cash. And I'm gonna tell y'all, it's a whole different feeling when you're sitting on, some thousands that are just there because you know that, and you're not touching it because you know that if something happens, no issue. Like the repair that I mentioned at the beginning, near the beginning of this podcast, and I had to make a household repair that I had to make, no issue, no issue, no panicking, no nothing, right? Because I've taken the time to make sure that there is some liquidity, right? That I have access to cash. And so that is going to replace your dependency on the credit, okay? Because credit was never established for you to become dependent on it. All right. So that's the first thing that you want to do. I'm talking to kingdom citizens now. All right. So if you not a kingdom citizen, you part of the world, you do what you do. But if you a kingdom citizen, we know that it is not responsible of us to be carrying debt, to be slave to debt, right? The second thing that you have to do is reduce your revolving debt, right? So high interest credit card debt is very dangerous. Okay. If you pay any attention, you will see that, okay, I'm paying this minimum, but it's not, uh, the balance is going nowhere. The balance is going nowhere. It's not making a dent, right? The high interest credit card debt is dangerous in an environment where there is tightening going on. Okay. So this is the season, please, people. This season, and there is, I've said this on my other platforms where I do Bible studies and things. Grace periods run out. Okay. So we're in a season, like I said, I've been saying since September, this is a time to aggressively attack any debt that you have, because that season is going to run out. Okay. Now, I'm not saying you won't be able to still pay on your debt. You're always going to be able to pay on it. But this is the best season right now to aggressively do it so that you can be in a better position when some other stuff comes down the pipe. Because listen, with everything that's going on, and if you study the patterns in the history of economy and all of that, things are not getting better for a period of time. And that's not to be pessimistic or because it's one administration's fault over another. It has nothing to do with any of that. It simply has to do with, this is the time that we're in. If you study the patterns over history, right now where we're at, it doesn't get better right now. We've got a war going on, right? So that is raising costs. We've got another like industry shift that is happening, right, with AI and all of that. And if you study what happens when there are these industry shifts, the economy isn't great. Okay. There are recessions, there are all kinds of things, right? Before it actually gets better. And so this is why I am imploring, because I ain't gonna beg you, right? But I'm just saying, this is the season for you to attack your debt very aggressively. Okay. Because if the limits keep shrinking, you lose flexibility. If the environment is tightening, you're losing access, right? If you're certainly not keeping up with what you have going on now, oh, trust, some credit card companies ain't looking to give you any more. Okay. So this is the season to aggressively attack your debt. There are a few different strategies out there in which you can do that. You can get on my calendar, so we can discuss your situation. The link to my calendar will be in the show. Get on my calendar. Stop waiting. Stop procrastinating. Stop putting this stuff off. Okay? Because the Calvary isn't coming for you. There is no one coming to save you. Nothing is coming to save you. The government, people, nothing. Okay? But you. I mean, this is going to sound crazy, but not even, yeah, because he has already saved you. How has he done that? By providing you with the principles that he does provide in his word about how to steward his money. So he's going to say, look, I've already put it here for you. The ball is in your court. Okay. Anyway, I didn't mean to get off on that tangent. All right. What else do we need to be doing? We need to be increasing our income streams, people. I'm always talking about this, right? Because if access tightens, which it will, it's not an if, right? Income becomes even more important. What skill can you monetize? What can you build on the side? Right. And I know that there are people who don't want to do full-fledged businesses, and you don't have to, but you definitely have to have some other streams of income. And you have to have other streams of income that you don't have to show up and um, work for all the time, because you only have so much time. I mean, we only have 24 hours in a day, right? So that's important. The next thing that we have to do is we have to stop normalizing debt dependence. Okay, this is a cultural thing. This is very much cultural, right? And I've heard people say over and over, like, well, this is just how it is. This is what we do. And, even our young people who are growing up, moving out of the house, getting on their own, it's just, that's how they do. Oh, well, I guess it's just time for me to get some credit cards. I guess it's time for me to finance a car. I guess it's time for me to finance a home. And no, right? That's not what it should have been, but this is how it's been normalized. And normalization does not equal wisdom, right? We have been doing these things and we see that these things don't work, yet we keep doing them, right? The next thing that we have to do is we have to think like an owner, not a borrower, okay? Now, I want to be clear. As a steward, we are never the owner. Okay, we manage what the resources Yah gives us. But in this instance right here where I'm talking about debt, we have to think like an owner would think. Okay? Borrowers ask, "Can I get approved?" But the owner is asking, "How do I build capacity?" Okay? But borrowers over here, how I got my hand out, and they're, willingly giving themselves up to slavery, because that's what it is. It's slavery, right? And the owner, of course, the owner wants more slaves. It's not rocket science. Of course, the owner wants more slaves. It's more profitable for them, right? So your mindset has to shift. So again, this is a warning season, people, and I'm going to say it again. But the time is going to come where I'm going to stop saying it, because that means that the grace period is now done, right? And now you're really going to have a tough time for the things that are coming, which at that point will be the things that are hitting, right? So I'm going to say this very clearly. And this is not fear based either. This is a warning based stewardship call. The system is shifting, access is tightening. Okay. Those who prepare right now will not feel the pressure later. All right. So if you're realizing that you don't actually have a system, that you have been relying on your access to credit and loans and things like that, then it's time to change that. Okay. Now, my financial rebellion 90-day experience, we are underway and no longer taking any more um, people. However, right, I do provide some one on one services. I can, help you with some strategy. There's a lot of things that we can do. You can also get my book. Okay. You can also get my book, because in my book, you will find strategy for building solvency, debt elimination strategies, income expansion, investment positioning, kingdom aligned financial discipline. You're going to find all of that there, right? You're going to learn how to move from dependence to discipline, reaction to strategy, survival to stewardship. Okay. So you can get my book, Stop Begging God for Money, at authorlexijohnson.com. You want to check out the types of services that I offer, you can go to mm4h.life. But I would highly encourage you to set up time on my calendar, calendly.com/purposeful Lexi /30 minutes. All of this is in the show notes. Please take an action. Don't do anything. Either buy the book and get on the calendar, or buy the book or get on the calendar or one or something. Do something. Okay. I'm looking forward to chatting with you so that you can move away from dependence, right, to being the steward that Yah called you to be. Well, that's all that we have for today. Okay. Um, I want to say this in closing that a credit crunch doesn't create problems, it just reveals them. All right. And the revelation is a gift, people, if you respond to it. So don't wait until your access is restricted to build what should have already been in place. I want you to steward wisely. I want you to prepare intentionally. And I want you to move with discipline. Okay? So that's it. That's a wrap. I'm Lexi Johnson, and I'm reminding you to produce, to multiply, and